It was an ordinary night in 1968. No special occasion. No particular crisis that stood out from 1,000 other nights like it. Tina Turner stood in a bathroom getting ready for a show, and she made a decision. She had 50 sleeping pills in her hand. She swallowed all of them. She would write decades later in her memoir, "I knew my suicide attempt hadn't been a classic cry for help. I'd chosen death." This is the story of the night Tina Turner almost didn't make it to the stage, and the strange, complicated reason she's still here to tell us about it. By 1968, Tina Turner had been married to Ike Turner for 6 years. She had been performing with him for 11. The Ike and Tina Turner Revue was respected on the R&B circuit. Successful, touring constantly, building something. From the outside, it looked like a partnership. From the inside, Tina would later describe a marriage that had become, in her words, a slow erosion. She wrote about that night with unusual clarity. There were 3 other women staying at the house. Ike was involved with all 3, and all 3 women were named Anne. As Tina later joked with dark precision, which meant he only had to remember one name. It wasn't the first time. It wasn't even the worst thing that had happened. But something about that particular night felt different. Tina described the feeling in 3 words. Everything was diminishing. Her confidence, her status, her sense of who she was. She'd spent over a decade building a career and a name the world recognized, and yet, inside her own home, none of it seemed to matter. She was, in that moment, just another woman that a powerful man didn't think he needed to remember. There was a show that night. Hair, makeup, the dress. The transformation into the woman thousands would scream for. But before any of that, in the quiet of a bathroom, with a show just hours away, she reached for a bottle containing 50 sleeping pills. What happened next is almost unbearably specific. Tina Turner knew roughly how long sleeping pills usually took to work, and she made a calculation. If she took them shortly before leaving, perhaps they wouldn't take effect until she was already on stage. And she would later admit something heartbreaking. Part of her thought that if she collapsed during the performance, at least Ike would still get paid. Even in the moment she decided she didn't want to live, part of her was still managing him, still protecting the machine that consumed her. She swallowed the pills, and then she began getting ready for the show, exactly as she had done 1,000 times before. But the math she had done in her head was wrong. The pills worked faster than she expected. She started losing consciousness while putting on her makeup. Someone realized something was wrong. She was rushed to the hospital. Doctors pumped her stomach. They brought her back. And when she woke up, Ike Turner was standing over her bed. According to Tina, his words were simple. "You should die." Then he told her to go back to work. And she did. The very same day she left the hospital. Weak, in pain, still suffering from cramps left behind by the procedure. But the tour didn't stop. There was no time to process. No recovery period. No chance to understand what had happened. She put the dress back on. She walked back onto the stage. And she sang. Tina Turner didn't speak publicly about that night for nearly 50 years. When she finally wrote about it in her 2018 memoir, My Love Story, she was 78 years old. By then, she had survived everything. The divorce, the comeback, the Grammys, the stadium tours, the extraordinary second chapter of her life. Why tell this story after half a century? Why return to the one night she had outrun for so long? Because she wanted people to understand something. What abuse does to a person's sense of self-worth. It wasn't only the broken jaw, or the black eyes, or the things people already knew. It was the quieter collapse, the moment when the woman who had become the queen of rock and roll felt like she didn't matter enough to keep living. She wanted people to know that survival isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's simply waking up in a hospital bed and going back to work, because you can't yet see another way. 16 years after that night, Tina Turner stood on the Grammy stage holding 4 trophies. 21 years after that night, she filled Wembley Stadium. 50 years later, she wrote the story down in her own words. She lived 55 more years after the night she didn't want to. She built an entirely new life, a solo career, a marriage built on kindness, a home beside a lake in Switzerland, and a legacy that outlived everyone who had ever made her feel like she wasn't enough. The pills didn't work the way she calculated, and because of that single miscalculation, the world received decades more of her music, more concerts, more triumphs, and more proof that survival itself can become an act of defiance. This is a heavy story, and we told it because Tina Turner chose to tell it herself, because she believed someone out there might need to hear it. If you're struggling right now, please don't carry it alone. Reach out. Talk to someone. There are people who care, and there is always another chapter waiting to be written. Subscribe to Tina Turner Untold, and we'll see you next week.